На ваш взгляд, влияет ли хвост на движение бобтейла?
So does the tail influence OEC movement in your opinion?
Well, first of all, the tail on the UK standard says natural carriage well covered in hair. That's all it says, so it leaves the tail open to absolutely anything. So whatever the tail is perfectly correct. We definitely need a more detailed tail standard. And the tail, does the tail influence movement? I don't think it does, and I don't think it should. It shouldn't influence the movement. The movement is influenced by correct conformation back and front. So if the shoulder angles are correct and the end angulations are correct, you're going to get the correct movement. Not a great deal to do with the tail.
Какое должно быть природное положение хвоста при движении рысью? Какие основные недостатки в поставе и ношении хвоста можно выделить на сегодняшний день у бобтейлов в Европе?
What is the correct natural tail carriage on the move when rolling? What are general faults in tail set and tail carriage now in Europe?
Well, all I can tell you is the standard for tails is very open. So at the moment, any tail is absolutely correct. But as a breeder and a judge, I don't like to see the tail carried over the back at all. And I want the tail to actually reach at least the hock for length and to be well covered in hair. But at the moment, until the UK Kennel Club brings in a standard that actually gives more details to the tail, it's up to the judges to interpret it. I don't think you want anything that looks unsightly to the eye. So anything that curls and turns over the back, to me, doesn't look right. I want a low carriage. Plus the fact the breed should have a rising top line. So if you have a rising top line, that tail's not just going to hang down. It's not possible. It's the top line and the tail is the continuation of the spine. So it's not going to work. But we definitely in the UK need a more, and not just the UK, everywhere, we need a detailed description of the tail. Having said that, the tail is only just one part of the whole dog. And just because you see a tail curl over the back, you cannot dismiss the dog because of that. It has to be the all-over picture.
Положение головы бобтейла при движении рысью. Какое положение естественно для бобтейла? Какому эксперты отдают предпочтение?
What is the correct head carriage when trotting? What is the natural head carriage on the move and what head carriage is preferred at the shoulder?
Well, it should all be the same. The head carriage should be the same. With all herding breeds, natural carriage is to lower the head. Always is to lower the head when moving. Yes, when they're stacked and put on the stack, we like to see that nice reach of neck and the head elbow. But when the dog moves and it drops its head, it's no problem at all. It is a natural carriage for the dog.
Желательный угол плечелопаточного сочленения для бобтейла.
What are desired shoulder blade, shoulder angulations?
The desired shoulder angulations is 45 degrees, but the shoulder angulations are absolutely vital because I think a lot of judges can see the back end, they can see the end angulation and the cow hocks, but very few judges, if you watch where the hands go, don't actually feel the shoulder angulations at all. And it's also important that the withers are not too wide. If you get too wide on the withers, you're going to get this wide front movement. You have to have nice clean withers. You want a nice reach of neck with a slight arch. You don't want too much neck because any exaggeration is a fault. It's all about balance. It's all about balance. And you only learn that with time and watching and watching.
Угол наклона крупа.
What are desired croup angulations?
The croup angulation, well, the croup angulation, the breed asks for a rising top line. So that's obvious to me. Unfortunately, all over the world, top lines now are struggling. We have a lot of level top lines and we have a lot that fall away behind, which really is a very serious fault. What makes the bobtail different from any other breed is this rising top line. It's so important. And when you watch judges, so many judges don't check for the correct top line or even mention the correct top line. You have to have that slight rise. Nothing huge, just a slight rise. Any exaggeration is wrong, just as no top line is wrong. Too much top line is wrong. It has to be balanced.
Какова причина перехлёста в движении?
What are the reasons of overreach and gait?
Overreach, well, it's shoulder angulations. If any dog's going to overreach either back or front, the shoulder angulation both back and the undangulation is wrong. But even worse is a short upper arm when you're going to get restricted movement. So you want a nice balanced movement. Overstretching is wrong, and understretching, short stepping is wrong. And I find that little short stepping, mincing movement very, very alien to my eyes. I don't like this shuffling. I like to see a nice extension and a drive. But it's all about balance again. The secret word with judging Old English sheepdogs is balance and no exaggeration. Everything must fit and flow. And it's important to see Old English move in profile. It's no good just seeing them coming backwards and forwards. You get to see the hind movement and the front movement, but just as important is that circular movement. And then you'll see the top line, and you'll see where the dog's extending and driving correctly.
Желаемая длина конечностей. Можно ли при оценке длины конечностей опираться на первый британский стандарт, где говорилось передние конечности, удерживающие корпус над землей на высоте, равной половине роста собаки?
What is the desired length of forequarters and hindquarters? Can we rely in our evolution on the first British standard where it was said the forwards removing the body from a medium
Height from the ground.
from the ground?
It's extremely important that a dog isn't too high on the leg. It's extremely important the dog isn't too short on the leg. If it's either, then the old balance is thrown out, it's wrong. Again, it comes down to experience, and our standard says 22 inches and upwards, so you could have quite a big bitch and a small dog, which is equally correct. The height is not it's not about being the wrong. The wrong thing is a dog should be masculine or feminine. You can have a big bitch, which is feminine, and a small dog that's masculine. It's about bone and substance and expression.
Насколько серьезны, на ваш взгляд, следующие недостатки и каковы их причины? Коровина, близкий постав в движении.
How serious are the following faults in your opinion, and what is the reason of these faults? Hooked gait, close behind on the move.
Absolutely hate to see both. I hate to see cowhawks and I hate to see close movement. It's extremely important to remember this is a working sheepdog, a drover's dog. They would have gone with the shepherds to market for 30 miles walking. Now, a dog that's cowhocked or weak behind could not possibly travel 30 miles without showing signs of distress. So cowhocks are extremely important, and it's just a case of putting your hand down and feeling them. But the minute a dog moves, however clever a person is with shaping the hocks or scissoring the hocks, it'll all show up when the dogs move. Cowhocks are very, very important not to have, and shouldn't be in any breeding if you can help it. It's a very serious fault.
Предпочтительный вес относительно роста кобелей и сук.
What should be height and weight ratio for males and females?
Well, like I just said, with our breed standard, it just gives 22 inches and upwards, which leaves it very open. So you can have a big bitch and a small dog, both equally correct. When I judge, I like to have a small feminine bitch and a big masculine dog. I like to be able to just look and say that's a male and that's a female. I don't want to have to feel behind. It should just be obvious to the eye.
Неполная обводка, пигмент глаз должны ли влиять на оценку собаки экспертами?
If eye rim's pigmentation is not complete, how strong will it influence the assessment at the show?
For me personally, eye pigmentation is very nice to have, but it's not important. It's a cosmetic thing. It's what I call icing on the cake. The important thing with a bobtail is the construction and movement and breed type. Very nice to have eye pigmentation. It gives a very nice expression when you've got it, but it doesn't affect working ability. It's nice to have, but it's not the end of the world. It certainly would be of great importance to me. I'd be more strict on cowhocks or wrong shoulders. Yes, I would like eye pigmentation. We all would, but there's no such thing as a perfect dog.
В каком возрасте у щенка должна быть полная пигментация носа?
At what age should a puppy have the nose laser completely black?
That's a very hard one to say because I've owned dogs that have not filled in their noses till they're 10, 11 months old, and others that are jet black when they're born, more or less. So that's a very open question. But I would think if a bobtail has got what you call a butterfly nose, when it's 14 months, then I think you have a problem. Having said that, as much as we ask for a great big black nose, and we want that big black nose, it doesn't affect the working ability. It's just a case of balancing it up when you judge. You're not going to disregard a dog purely because it has a slight pigmentation problem. There's far more important things. Get the shoulders and the back ends right first, have a nice quality jacket, then start to worry about pigmentation.
Серорожденные щенки с черной пигментацией. Можно их ли использовать в разведении?
Is it possible to use in breeding dogs born grey with black nose and eye rims pigmentation?
The trouble is when you have puppies that are born grey, and we have very few of them in the UK, and when I've spoke to Mrs. Ashcroft of the famous Barnaby kennels, I think in all the breeding she ever did, she only had probably 2 grey puppies, only ever 2 grey puppies. There always is going to be a pigmentation problem, and if it doesn't show up in the first generation, it will show up in the next generation. There's always that problem there. So, grey puppies, not a thing I particularly love. I like to see a puppy born black and white, or if you want to call it blue and white.
Белые блестки на плаще допустимы ли? И если да, то какого размера вы допускаете их в разведении?
Are the small white spots on the grey area accepted in dogs used in breeding? If they are what size?
The important thing here is the size. If you have a small white spot, it's no problem at all. I know in America they show them with big flashes. In England in the 60s, when I first started showing the dogs, some of our champions had big flashes. But at that time the standard was very open. Now we have a standard that asks for a grey, and I don't like flashes at all. A small spot wouldn't bother me a great deal if the conformation movement was right, but to be honest, I like to have a solid body. I love head markings, I don't mind any other markings, I don't mind black legs, it doesn't bother me at all, but I think the body should be solid. I really do.
Белые носки на задних конечностях. До какой высоты они допустимы?
What height of white socks on hindquarters can be acceptable?
Our standard allows for anything really, as long as it doesn't go too far up. Personally, I like up just to the hock joint, so it's just up to the hock joint. And I think, and I have owned actually a dog with 1 grey hawk and 1 white hawk, and unless you understand movement, it can be very deceptive when it moves away. People can get the wrong impression. It doesn't look right. You've got to understand. So, for me, up to the hawk I like, and if it's solid, I also like. It's no problem. Just a little bit of white on the toes, no problem, or a full solid leg. The more white you go up, the harder it is for some judges, especially non-breed judges, to get their eye in for that movement. If you have actually in Russia got dogs with 1 white hawk and 1 grey hawk, and you look, you will see how difficult it is. It sometimes gives the wrong.
В 1986 году в британском стандарте были внесены изменения в описании формата собаки: компактный, квадратный, прикуса, прямой, ножницы и роста в сторону увеличения. Чем это было обусловлено?
In 1986, there were made some changes in British standard concerning general appearance. Compact looking was changed to compact looking, bite level to scissors bite, and pincer bite tolerated but indesirable. In height, it increased by 2 inches. What was the reason for those changes?
Poor reasons. To me, it shouldn't have happened. For me, the perfect bite is a level bite. With a level bite, you get that nice square jawline. When you have a pincer bite, they start to get a little bit weak in the jawline, and they're what I call sharky mouths or spoon mouths. The Old English should have a square jaw, and a level bite is no problem, and in a pastoral breed, 2 drop front teeth is no problem, because a lot of bobtails will have 2 drop front teeth. Scissor bite, it's what we want, it's excellent. A level bite to me you will get that better jawline. I don't think the standard should have been changed, but I'm not in charge of things. What was the other thing? The compact. Well, an Old English should be compact. I hadn't realised that we had increased it by 2 inches, the standard. As far as I'm aware, the standard is still 22 inches and upwards. Are you sure we've increased it by 2 inches? I don't think so.
Говорит ли фраза «полный ножницеобразный прикус» о том, что у бобтейла требуется полная зубная форма? 42 зуба. Как оценивать собаку, имеющую неполную зубную форму? Можно ли ее выставлять? Можно ли ее использовать в суждении?
Does the expression complete scissor bite in the standard means that a complete dentations of 42 teeth is required? If a dog has completely dentation, he should be. How should we evaluate this dog? Can we show it? Can we breed it?
You definitely can show it, and you definitely can read from it. Yes, perfectly we'd want a full set of teeth, but it's not the be-all and end-all of the world. I don't think English judges are as strict on mouths as what a lot of the European and continental judges are, that will count every individual tooth. I like to look personally that it's either a scissor bite or a level bite, and I like to see it's a full mouth, but it wouldn't influence me in a grading at all. It wouldn't make no difference. As long as the bite was level or a scissor bite, it would need for working. 42 teeth wouldn't make it work any better. If 1 or 2 teeth are missing, to me it's not the end of the world. I accept totally that some European judges are taught to disregard them. That's their problem. As a breeder of 50 years almost, and an owner of 50 years, it doesn't matter to me. I'd like it, yes, ideally we'd like it. No dog's perfect, and I certainly wouldn't disregard a dog from a breeding program just because it had a missing tooth, or even if it's had a couple of dropped front teeth. There's far more important things to worry about. Please, please, get shoulders and hind angulation first before you start getting uptight over silly little things that won't alter the working ability. At the end of the day, this dog must be able to do what it was originally bred to do, and that's to work. The missing tooth isn't going to affect that.
Какой тип староанглийской овчарки вы предпочитаете? Каков ее рост? Что такое идеальное ОЕС для вас?
What type of OES do you prefer? Of what height? What is an ideal OES for you?
Well, breed type is very important. For me, I want a short couple dog with a nice top line, excellent angulation back and front. I want the expression that only a good Old English sheepdog has. That comes with a square jaw, dark eyes, and a stop. The stop is absolutely important. If you don't have that stop, you're never going to get that right expression. And however clever you are with the brush or the back combing, it still isn't going to work. When you put that head down like that, you'll see the head's not correct. I think you're very lucky if you get everything you want in one parcel. What I like to try and remember when I'm judging is, could this dog do the job he was originally bred to do? And if he can do that, then I'm happy. And I can quite forgive on an odd few brown hairs, missing tooth, maybe a bit light eye, lack of pigmentation. The dog has to be able to work. That's the important thing. And I think new up and coming judges need to understand movement. Absolutely important. And I go to the show sometimes and watch some of the judges, even to the very highest level, and they move the dogs and move the dogs, but then pull out the worst movers. I don't understand why. If you're going to do that, then don't move them, because people around the ringside are not silly. They can see what a judge can see as well.
Нужно ли проходить со староанглийской овчаркой курс дрессировки или достаточно домашнего воспитания?
Should an OES be trained with an instructor for an obedience course, or a home training will be sufficient?
Personally, I've never used an instructor. I live with the dogs. My dogs live with me 24 hours a day in, day out. They understand the routines. They understand my moods. They understand what's right and wrong. It's just learning like children. They go through a naughty stage like teenagers do. But eventually, if the breeder's got the right temperament, it will settle in and do everything. So I've never had no need for trainers. I think sometimes you can be overtraining a bobtail, especially if you want to show it. A bobtail, if they first come into the ring, instantly they will catch your eye and make an impression. If it's got that, Amir, come and look at me. If you're too strict, it'll come in and just look ordinary. So let it have a bit of character. A naughty puppy, anything that's going to leap and bounce, doesn't matter. As long as you can just see that bit of movement to know it's correct. I like to see puppies that are happy. Who wants a puppy to stand like a rock? Nobody.
Если староанглийская овчарка на выставке в ожидании перед рингом проявляет агрессию к другим собакам, охраняя свое пространство и вещи, как это понимать? Отклонение в поведении или норма с учетом того, что мы имеем дело с овчаркой?
If an OEC shows an aggression to other dogs while protecting his area and sings while waiting near the show rings, is it an incorrect behavior or is it a normal behavior for a shepherd?
Personally, I would say it's not normal. It's not acceptable. The thing that attracted me to the Old English Sheepdogs at the very beginning was their temperaments. I live with these dogs, and when you breed puppies, most of them just go into pet homes, so you want dogs that have got absolutely perfect temperaments. There is absolutely no problem at all with the typical Old English Sheepdog temperament. Any sort of aggression is not acceptable in my eyes. I can understand a stud dog with a female in season will show a little bit of it's my girl sort of thing. But apart from that, I would make no excuses. And if I was judging, and I have judged all over the world, in some countries I've disregarded a dog straight away. If an Old English Sheepdog growls at me, growls, just one growl, it's not acceptable. It's not what's wanted in the breed, and I would send it out. It's so important.
Можно ли считать правильным поведение староанглийской овчарки, охраняющей свой дом и территорию около дома? Или это не породное поведение?
Is it correct for an OES to stand
Ground.
over his house and house territory, or is it a non-typical behavior?
This is a very hard question for me because at one time I had 9 Old English Sheepdogs living in the house and I was still burgled. My dogs, when visitors come to the house, my dogs just leap up and bounce and are very friendly. I can't get them to guard the property. I wish I could. I had a Hungarian Puli live in the house and his temperament would have seen anybody off. But the Old English Sheepdogs just love everybody, unfortunately. And twice I was burgled, and twice when the detective came to see, he couldn't understand it with all the dogs in the house that I would be burgled. But I'd rather have temperament like that than nice. It's better to live with. It's a very difficult question. Yes, we want them to look after the house, but mine never have to.
Кого предпочитают видеть в ринге эксперты? Профессиональных хендлеров или владельцев собак?
Do the experts prefer to see in the show rings professional handler or dog owners?
I don't think it's important. When you're judging, it's not about the handling, it's all about the dog. It's the dog that's important. Because someone's very clever at handling, it doesn't make no difference. It doesn't make no difference. You should be, when you're at this sort of level, you should be able to see by the handling skills and the presentation. Yes, it's very nice. It's just the icing on the cake. When you're judging, what's important is that dog. Whether it belongs to a total novice or a top professional, you should be able to find the qualities. Even if it's badly handled, you still should be able to find those qualities.
В каком темпе должен двигаться бобтейл в ринге?
At what speed is it better to show movements?
I like to see the dogs walk. Once walk so you can see the typical trotting and the roll. Unfortunately now it seems fashionable that everybody has to run round very fast. I think there's room for that as well. But a nice walk up and down, nice triangle and then a circle, you should be able to pick up on everything.
Должен ли бобтейл бежать у ноги хендлера на свободной ринговке или впереди на натянутой ринговке?
Should the dog run near the leg of his handler on a loose lead, or should the dog run ahead of the lead being tied?
Ideally the dog should run at the side of the handler on a loose lead. But Old English being what Old English are, they want to gallop and be off. So sometimes you have to restrict them a little bit. I don't like to see Old English run in front like GSDs. it's not typical of the breed.
Как относятся в Англии к современному выставочному грумингу с явно выраженной стрижкой и начесом?
What is English experts' opinion about nowadays show grooming with overdoing of scissors and good content?
This is a very interesting question because in the UK I write for a weekly magazine, dog magazine, and just very recently I've gone into print about presentation in the Old English Sheepdog and that it's going too far and we don't want this American style of over-presenting. I think there's a happy medium and I have no problem at all with a little bit of tidying up, no problem at all. But when it's so sculptured and shaped, it's not a natural working sheepdog, and that to me is a problem. If I'm judging, would I disregard it? No, I wouldn't. I would just take it into consideration. It has to be about the dog, and ideally I would like a natural presentation. If somebody wants to scissor and clip, then I take that into consideration as well. But for me, if I'm being personal, my own dogs are shown natural. I do a little bit of tidying up on the feet. I will get a comb and take a little bit of excess comb out of the neck, and I will try to shorten the back by taking a little bit off the bottom. I don't cut any of the long coat at all, and definitely don't do any of the scissoring. And nothing is more horrible to my eyes than when you see this absolutely perfect round and the ears cut in a line. I don't like it. I've seen it today, and I mentioned it to the handler today. It didn't affect my placing of the dog. I would just like it left normal.
Влияет ли на экспертизу цвет и качество шерсти бобтейла, если бобтейл еще находится в возрасте смены шерсти? Будут ли замечания, если в такой момент бобтейл имеет бледно-голубой цвет?
Some OES, when the coat changes, get a very light grey color of the coat. Some experts say then, that the color is too light. After the coat changes, the color becomes darker. What can you say about this? Is it bad to have such light color during the coat changing?
I think it's a problem. I think when you've got a puppy and a junior dog that's in a light pale silver grey coat, it's very nice for that time and then, and you seem to do a lot of winning under the judges because the judges just see this light grey coat. But with light grey coats, and I've had them so they're being grey that you couldn't tell the white neck from the grey back. But when that dog gets to 3.5, 4-year-old, you have problems. That coat will either go black or brown. Worstly, it will go brown because the coat's too light. Very few stay grey, and this is the problem I have with clipping and scissoring. When you scissor that coat off, you can't tell what colour that coat is. People can cut off 4 inches of brown coat. You would never know. All you see is the undercoat, the grey undercoat. So if the coat is left natural, you actually see the fully finished mature jacket. And when I first started in sheepdogs, they weren't winning CCs till they were 5, 6-year-old. This is a slow maturing breed. And to give a CC, you want the fully finished mature animal, and the coat isn't finished till 4, 5-year-old. Yes, these light silver grey coats look very glamorous and very nice to the eye. When they're 4, I'd like to see what they look like when they're 4, without being scissored. You will find that the light grey coats, people will have the coat cover with a scissor at all. That is the problem with this American breeding, because not breeding, the American style of presentation, they scissor off all this coat, so you don't know what the colour is like. And you know yourself, you can have 4 inches of grey and 4 inches of brown. If you scissor that off, the judge will never know.
Какие существуют сильные и слабые стороны, присущие английским, европейским и американским собакам? На что следует обращать внимание? Каковы положительные и отрицательные тенденции в породе?
What are the weak and strong common points in English, European and American OEC? What should be paid attention at? What are the positive and negative tendencies in the breed?
This is a good question as well. I think everywhere has the same problem, and it's a movement problem. I think in England we breed some very good coats. Having said that, judging this show today, your very best are as good or even better than most that we have in the UK. The bitch lineup today was absolutely wonderful, and I would expect all those bitches to win the CCs anywhere in the world where I've judged. What was the question? think the American dogs excel in hindquarters. They've got very nice big chunky back ends, nice strength behind. But those that I've seen look a little wide on the front. They seem extremely compact. But how do you judge what sort of coat they have when they've taken it all off? Very difficult. I think the English dogs and the European dogs, there's not a lot of difference between them. There's good and bad both in the UK and in England. I think at the present time in England, we're lacking very good males. We are. And I think that's the same everywhere. I think wherever you go, the bitches are stronger in depth of quality. And we have one or two really nice bitches, just like you have here.
Насколько далеко ушла порода от пастушьей породы, породы, имеющей рабочие качества?
How far have the breed moved away from the breed of a shepherd, a breed with the working qualities?
Well, I'd like to think not at all, but I know they have, because I have photographs from the 1920s of sheepdogs, and they were a lot smaller, a lot finer. And at that time, of course, when the sheep were shaved in the summer to get rid of the coat, they'd shave the dogs off as well. So they were all shaved. So you never saw an old English sheepdog with a full coat. Of course, with modern food, modern grooming, modern coat conditioners, we have far more coat on the dogs now. But that's just purely for the exhibition side of it. I'd like to think the dogs present day could still do the job they were intended to do. Maybe they're a little bit bigger, a little bit heavier. I think the earlier dogs were probably a lot finer. I think modern day dogs.
Вы судили бобтейлов в России в 2006 году. Произошли ли в породе в России какие-либо изменения с тех пор?
You have judged our club show in
2006.
Can you see any changes in the breed in Russia since that time?
I can see a lot of change. But I tell you what really pleased me today was the fact that when I judged in 2006, my best in show winner today was a very young bitch that I gave the CC and best bitch. And it pleases me that now she is the fully finished mature thing that I got it right, because she has matured into a beautiful bitch. Having said that, the depth of quality, what I had today to what I had in 2006, today was far better. There was far better quality here today. In 2006, yes, there were some good ones, but there also was, well, the example is, I didn't give any very goods today. Everything I gave was excellent. I could find something about every bobtail I liked today. No serious breeding faults. Yes, they all had little things to change. But in 2006, I remember giving some very goods and actually disregarding one or two of the dogs. So you have really come on. I think the dogs you have here today, the quality you have, is as good as anywhere. You could bring these dogs and take them into any country, and if you have the correct judges that understand the breed, your dogs would be able to hold their own. I'm not saying they would win everything. I'm sure they wouldn't, because different judges have different priorities. But to me, today, I'm absolutely delighted to see what the Russian sheepdogs are like. 100% improvement, definitely. Love them. There were at least 2 or 3 there I would very happily have put in my suitcase and taken home with me. Especially, there was a very nice young junior bitch I liked, and the only reason she didn't go best junior in show was because her coat needed a little bit more time. But I could not fault that movement. That movement going and coming was wonderful. And if you can breed dogs that can move like that, you're not going far wrong.
Еще можем видеть что-то.
Почему вы занимаетесь именно староанглийской овчаркой? И чем она привлекла вас на фоне других пород?
Why did you choose OES as your breed? What are the points of attraction for you in this breed?
I chose an Old English sheepdog because in 1964, as a schoolboy, I worked in a rough collie shelter kennel, and I used to go to the shows and show rough collies. And at the shows, Mrs. Lawson of the very famous Prospect Blue Kennel had a dog there called Champion Prospect Shaggy Boy. It's a champion dog, and I remember looking at him on the bench and thinking, wow, one day I'm going to own a dog like that. And I sat with this dog, and he was doing this with his paw like they all do, and I could cuddle him, and he never had seen me before in his life. His temperament was wonderful. And I just went home and I told my mother, I was only a schoolboy, I want an Old English sheepdog. In those days, they weren't very common, and she didn't know what one was. And she said to me, "How big do they grow?" And I said, "Oh, only up to there, Mum, only up to there." And this first dog I got just grew and grew and grew. And she kept saying to me, "When is it going to stop growing?" But that dog won the first prize at Crufts in 1970 and won 29 best in shows. So I was very lucky that the first Old English sheepdog I had was a good one. And the temperament, of course, drew me to the breed. It's so important.
Еще можно.
Момент.
Какой?
Когда вы можете определить, что щенок с выставочным потенциалом? По каким критериям вы это определяете?
At what age can you say that a puppy has a show perspective? What are your criteria to determine it?
Well, the problem with puppies change so much. When I'm breeding a litter, when the puppy is born, I instantly pick that puppy. The minute it comes away from the bitch, I know, and I'm very, very rarely wrong. That's the puppy I always stand with. Yes, people say you should see them on their feet, but usually if it's bred right, it's bred for good movement, that will come. I know by the shape when it's born, the head shape, the body shape, instantly, that that's the one that's going to stay with me. They go through different stages. I mean, ideally, in the ideal world, if I was going to buy a puppy for showing, purely for showing, I would buy a 10-month-old puppy. I think then you have a rough idea of the conformation. It's no good saying you're going to have the coat because you don't know what the coat's going to be like till the dog's 4-year-old. So you have to disregard the coat. You have to remember what breed it is behind it, because good coats are in breeding. You breed for good coats. Once you've got that good coat, it's no good unless you condition the dog correctly, feed it correctly, and understand how to look after the coat. It's important you know how to look after the coat. But if I was in an ideal world, I would pick a puppy at 10 months. But personally, I pick them the minute they come away from the bitch. And I always picked like that, always.
Еще.
Как вы относитесь к тесному инбридингу?
What do you think to close inbreeding?
I can remember Mrs. Gold using a brother and sister mating, Viceroy and Venus, and she produced a bitch called Champion Rolling Sea Christabel. A brother-sister mating was wonderful. Problem was, slightest noise and she was on her belly, temperament was wrong. So close inbreeding, I think the ideal breeding is line breeding. The kennels that produce, at one time I could go to a show, not anymore, but at one time I could go to a show and I would know that was a Prospect Blue, I would know that was a Barnaby, I would know that was a Southview, because they all line bred and they all produced a particular type. One had fabulous coats, you would call a nice quality coat a pocketall coat. A pocketall coat was always blue, always grey. Barnaby's always had these beautiful necks and shoulders, and the Southview stuff always moved. You would never see a Southview dog that didn't move correctly. So line breeding is the best, you know what you're going to get. I think if you're going to outcross, and I've outcrossed, you're going to get all sorts. I had a German bitch, and I used a champion male of mine on her, and I used someone else's champion dog on her, and I used another dog of mine that wasn't a champion on her. All outcrosses, all the puppies were totally different. Different coats, different sizes, different shapes. So outcrossing to me is potluck. You've got to know your breeding. You've got to know your breeding. Line breeding is going to produce what you're used to. Occasionally with line breeding, you're going to have to go out. And that's when some of our breeders back home have had problems. Because I know people like Mrs. Ashcroft, the Barnaby lady. She went out and totally lost it for a few years before she got herself back on the. You have to know what you're doing. But, you know, you can sit there and study pedigrees, look at pedigrees all the time. And at the end of the day, a little bit of luck comes into it. A little bit of luck, it's important. You can just stare and stare, and is this dog going to suit this bitch? Is this bitch going to suit that dog? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And if you deal with any sort of livestock, not just dogs, but anything, it's always risks. Any breeder that says they haven't had health problems, they haven't had some problem of some sort, is lying. If you deal with livestock, you're going to get some problem one way or another. Our aim as breeders, all of us, is to breed the perfect Old English sheepdog. I haven't seen it yet. I've seen a bitch that was very close, Miss Marple. Champions of Hulls, Miss Marple of Lameda, very, very close. And I've seen some wonderful sheepdogs, wonderful. But the perfect one is not being born yet. And that's what we all hope to breed. That's what makes it exciting.
Еще можно. Есть еще? Ждут? Все. Но там много еще вопросов? Ну, много мы не успеем, у меня где-то на 10 минут.
Какие общие слабые стороны у российских бобтейлов? На что прежде всего следует обратить внимание?
What are common weak points of Russia OES? What are the main things that breeders should pay
10
attention?
минут осталось
I
батарейки.
don't think it's just Russia. The weak points in the breed have always been, as long as I can remember, movement. Cowhocks and close movement. It's just been a problem in the breed. And yes, good quality coats. It's okay having a massive, great big coat. That's not the important thing. I'd rather have a little bit of coat that's the perfect sort of weather-resistant quality coat than a coat like that, unless it's the right quality. So I don't think Russia has any problems any different from any other country. We all have these movement problems. To breed the perfect moving sheepdog? I don't know. I saw a young bitch today that was close as I was going to get to seeing the movement I want. Whether she'll get the coat I want, I don't know. That's what makes it all exciting. That's why we do it. And different judges have different priorities. Some judges coat's important, some judges movement's important. For me, movement's important, as I'm sure you're well aware when I move you all. That's what makes it all interesting, I think. And if we all thought exactly the same, it would be very boring. The same dogs would win all the time. As proof today.
Ничего, еще будем задавать вопрос?
Думаю, Андрей, все уже.
Все? Может, какой-то последний там есть какой-нибудь?
Вопросы уже остались такие.
Неинтересный, да? Ну, давайте тогда закончим. Вот сама.
Оля, а как это сделать?
Если приобретаете новую собаку в питомник, чем руководствуетесь в первую очередь?
If you wish to buy a new dog for your kennel, what are you guided by the first in choosing this new dog?
Well, if I was going to go out and buy a dog at the present time, I would have certainly done my homework. I would have gone and looked at the dogs, and the dogs would have to have moved. If they moved, then I would show some interest. But I'd also want to know what's behind them. And I'm lucky. I've got people I can't remember, dogs I can remember. And if I look at a pedigree, I can remember all the dogs, all the generations back. And usually, because I do a lot of judging, all dogs I've given CCs to. So that is obviously would be the breeding and the kennel I would focus on. I wouldn't go to something that I didn't know. There's no point. But I don't think now at my age I will be going out and buying any more dogs. I have 3 and that's enough. When my little girl now, I have a bitch at home 20 months. I only show her very occasionally because I'm so busy with the judging. When she goes, I have a grandfather at home, he's 12. But I keep saying no more because I'm so busy with the judging these days. And you cannot do it all. You cannot show dogs and judge dogs. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Because it's not just Old English I judge, I do lots of other things. And of course all the hard work, keeping a bobtail coat right for showing. And if I'm only going to show her 3 times a year, love her as I do, and I'm very tempted to breed from her. People keep saying, are you going to have puppies from her? But I know if I breed from her, I'll want to keep something. And I don't really want to go down that road again.